All right. Sound check. Sound check, check, check. See Farsight, usually in the house. He is indeed. All right. Sound is good. All right. Welcome, everybody, to CanHammer TV, your source for 40K from the Great White North. It is Custodes Tactica, episode 27. And I added this on at the last minute last night because I was so hype about last night's game that I had to talk about it. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go over the game. I've got the footage. We're going to go over it at 4 times speed. We're just going to talk about a few things. We won't look through the whole game. It wasn't a particularly hardcore competitive tactical game, so I'm not going to really dissect it in terms of tactics, but we're going to talk about some of the 9th edition rules changes and use the game as an example. So that's cool. Before we get started, the requisite Telemon porn. Okay. Probably shouldn't say porn. It probably flags the video somehow. Telemon show. I don't know. Yeah. We are going to talk about that and then go over my thoughts on lists and how units performed and also the 9th edition changes. So we're going to do that. Before we go any further, we'll have another game next week. Again, I'm only allowed to play against Phil right now, so it's going to be against Phil again. He's going to modify his list now that he knows what he's up against. And I'm going to play a completely different list. So just to try new stuff, we're going to swizzle the table around a little bit just to make it slightly less dense. But we're going to have some fun again next week. And we'll try and do that every week until release time. And reminder, everybody, July 25th, we will be spending all day streaming new 9th edition on release day. 2 games going at the same time, coverage of both tables, and that should be super fun. We've got 6 people. We're all going to be playing all different armies, so it should be a lot of fun. And with that in mind, I now have the Indominus box. Shout out to Dan at Red Dragon for lending us his demo copy, and so I will have that for the next little bit. And it's super good, as you would expect. The box is amazing quality. The miniatures are all in there, super good. There's the Rulebook is a beautiful book. We'll talk about that in a second. The this little pamphlet here goes through the fluff of the Necrons and the Marines, and all the new data sheets are in here for these guys. No points. And then there's a nice book on how to put everything together and paint it and everything. There's and that's about it. There's not that much else in the box. And of course, Dan has told me that all the other stuff, all the goodies, the chapter approved books, the little combat gauge, all the other stuff will arrive on release day. So let's just talk about this for a second. So everybody heard about all the shields and stuff like that, and so I have no doubt that our shield will not change, and that they're just changing the rules for these dudes and their shields. All right, so we can probably just let that drop. It's probably not a huge deal. The other thing I want to talk about is just Judicar or Judiciar. It's Judiciar, I guess. First of all, I don't know how many points he is, but he's only 4 power, so he's not going to be that many points. This dude hits on 2s in combat now. 4 attacks, plus all the Marine rules. He hits at strength 7, -3, 2 damage with mortals on 6s. That's nice. And he makes a unit within 6 inches fight last for free. Just like that. Boom. Okay. Anyway. Let's talk about some of these Necrons. Oh, HQ or Elite. He is a Elite. Okay, let's talk about Necrons. So the Overlord, they changed my will be done to the command phase, which was predicted. Unit within 9 inches. Each time a model makes a unit attack, add 1 hit roll, can only be selected. So I don't think that changed, or Phil told me how it changed, but I can't remember now. Anyway, what we really want to be showing you is the Peck Lord. Okay, this dude, weapon skill ballistic 2, rerolls hit rolls of 1. And he also rerolls wound rolls of 1 for all friendly destroyers, including himself. So he rerolls everything, hits on 2s. He has strength 6 and 6 wounds, 3 up save, 4 attacks. So he has a assault 2d3 blast weapon. That's 6 -1, 1 damage. So that does 6 shots against hordes. He has a claw that doubles his attacks to 8 attacks, strength 6 -1, 1 damage. And he has the Hyperphase Harvester, the big sword, and that boosts him to strength 8, -4, 3 damage. He does get -1 to hit for that, though. That's pretty nice. Trajan crying in his sleep. Okay. The Scorpack Destroyers are basically the same, except they have one less strength. And yeah, this stuff is pretty cool, I gotta say. Necron Warriors get a now built-in reroll 1 of reanimation. So that's a preview of some Necron power coming up. Okay? No longer can you charge willy-nilly into a Necron line like I was doing last night. Okay. So that's cool. All right, let's just talk about this rulebook. First of all, this rulebook is massive. Okay? This is the width of my hand. Okay? It's a massive book. It is the heaviest book that I own by far. It is super nice. Super nice. No adulteration. It's just a nice artwork on the cover. The binding is amazing. The quality of the pages is amazing. It's an amazing book. The first half of it is fluff. Fluff and pictures, which is cool. Very cool. The rules start on page 200 approximately. So there you go. That is all fluff right here. Okay, which is fine because this is supposed to introduce new people to the whole universe, and they'll probably sit there for hours reading all that stuff. So that's cool. I don't begrudge that. But if you probably want to carry a little PDF of the rules instead of this honker. Okay, Snoot the Bill, welcome. Symbol, welcome. Christian Luera, welcome. Mr. Funktastic, Ember Faith, of course. All the usual peeps. Mr. Funktastic, Sean Stryker, NZ40K Abel, and welcome everybody. Okay, so I just want to point out a few things. So this picture. Okay, so this picture over here, this is what they showed you on the Warhammer community page as their kind of recommended table. Okay, not this picture, the other side. Anyway, so this picture is a narrative version of a 4x5 table, 6 big ruins and a bunch of small stuff, and they want you to just fight in the middle. Okay? This picture is what they think a matched play game would look like. 6 big ruins with a bunch of small stuff. That is not one piece for every 12 square inches. So it's a little bit misleading. Now the GT book might come out with a different picture. Who knows? But it makes me think that my table is a little bit too much. And I was just thinking last night that actually a knight could not have walked around my table last night. Which is fine for me. So probably reduce it down a little bit. But it's a squishy little table. Okay. We're going to talk about that when we talk about the game. Okay. So nicely printed out secondaries now. Don't have to look at these stupid watermarks and all that stuff. So that's nice. The missions, we have a nicely redone, easily to read mission PDF pinned in the general forum on the Discord. So if you want to just download a simple PDF with the missions and summarized easily for you without having to look through the book and everything, there's a PDF in the Discord pinned in the general chat. Okay, and you can access the Discord there. So for those guys who are on the Discord, just go to the general channel. It's pinned there. It's like a document, and they've retyped all the secondaries too. So it's a nice little PDF. You can just print it out for your games. Okay, and shout out to Iron Hands, somebody who made that today and put it up there. So that's great. We have great members in the Discord. Okay, there's a whole section here on Crusade, which is cool. Okay, and then we're going to come to the appendix section now. So first of all, there's a designer's commentary, which just says, here's some stuff that we didn't want to put in the rule book, but everybody asks us. So here it is. This is kind of like a basic FAQ. And here it says, of course, here are some rare rules. So this is talking about situations that might turn up and how to resolve them. And if you can't resolve them, refer to the most important rule, which of course is to have fun. Okay. So list of blast weapons, the list of additional aircraft, blah, blah, blah. So most of this people have seen already. What I wanted to point out was this little rare rule paragraph, always fight first and last. So some rules allow a unit from your army to always fight first in the fight phase, even if you didn't make a charge move this turn. So like when you stooping dive. And it says there in stooping dive, you fight first before charging models. Okay. So it says, if the enemy has units that have charged or that have similar rules that allow them to fight first, then alternate selecting units to fight with from amongst these units, starting with the player whose turn is taking place. So that kind of means that if you stoop, a charging unit gets to fight first, because it's their turn by definition, because stooping is in your opponent's charge phase. Now, there's a whole argument, of course, that Codex trumps Rulebook. Sure. But that's not written anywhere in the new edition so far. So who knows what's going to happen. But as of right now, and I haven't stooped anybody in a long time. Nobody really falls for it anymore. It's 3CP. But we'll see how that turns out. I just thought I'd point that out. People can argue about it as they will. Okay. There's a really great section here on units and models that are repositioned or replaced, and what they do, what they count as having done, what buffs they keep, what buffs they don't keep. So this is a really kind of a nice box that summarizes a lot of FAQs that have popped up over the years. So that's super nice. Again, fighting again, resurrected models, priorities, which rules that when you have two rules that conflict, which one takes priority. So it's a really good section that people should read on how they intend these things to interact. Will save a lot of FAQ questions in the future. Okay, and then the glossary. So this is 5 pages of glossary. And the glossary is just a term and a definition. Really nice. Everything that you could possibly want is defined precisely in the glossary. And that they've already done a great job of doing this throughout the rulebook. But just in case you needed it, active player. The active player is the player whose turn is currently taking place. Just in case you had any English interpretation issues with that term, here it is. So it literally is stuff. Can fly refers to a model or a unit that has the fly keyword. Boom. Okay. I actually think that this glossary is amazing, and if you have any doubts, arguments about English, try looking it up in the glossary first, because it might well be defined there and tell you exactly what is supposed to be what, okay? So, it even defines army. A player's army consists of every model in their roster and any models added to it over the course of the battle. Jason C., welcome. He is the Red Viper on Discord, whose name you cannot type because it's completely in Greek numerals. So it's not actually the Stratego. It's not actually the universal special rules. It's not rules at all. It is just terms. Okay, so here, improving weapon skill, ballistic skill, and save characteristic. When improving a weapon skill, ballistic skill, or save characteristic, you subtract the appropriate amount from the number before the plus sign. Example, it's spelled out for you so that you cannot mess with it. Okay, basically that's it. Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, automatically wound. If an attack automatically wounds, the wound roll is automatically successful. Whereas here, it defines automatically successful. Basically, the roll did not happen. Okay? You just skip right past that roll. So that's a very useful definition. Okay? Automatically hit, automatically passes. Okay? Aura. Okay? Charge move, has charged, has been charged. Okay, like CP is a command point. Okay, just in case you were wondering. So it is really, really good. It just defines all of these little things. Okay. Wounds. If a wound is successful, the attack is said to wound. How many times did that come up in 8th edition? Right? When is the wound? What does the wound mean? Is it... man, that does like come up so many times, right? So it's like really good. Really good. Okay, kudos GW. Okay, and then like 5 pages of art at the end of the book. Really nice. Okay, that's enough about that. My arm is getting tired carrying it. Okay, hang on. Let's pop this up. Where is it going? Boom. Okay. So we're going to talk about last night's game. Going to go over it very quickly. So you can see here in the top part of the screen here, this is last night's game. And so if you missed it, it was a game between myself and Necrons. You can find the list that we played at CanHammer.ca. And basically, this was our table. We were playing Mission 2, which is kind of like Border Wars and AOS. And Phil's at the top and I'm at the bottom. We're just going to go here, 400 speed. So we won't talk... talk too much about tactics of the game because not really important. So the first thing to note is that the table is pretty dense. This was 15 pieces, which is how many 12 by 12 squares there are in a 4 by 5 table. And so I put 15 pieces on. And I also wanted to try some different things. We got some runes here. We got these unpassable sort of blocks here. This is a building, and then we got 2 forests, and then some of these obstacles, which we actually decided was just too confusing, and we didn't play them as obstacles, just random pieces. So the first thing that I want to comment on is the terrain rules. So actually, if you have big terrain like this, the terrain rules are fine. You just have to be very clear about whether you're in the terrain or whether you're behind the terrain. And if you're in the terrain and they can see you, they can shoot you, you get cover save. If you're behind the terrain, they can't see you. And so other than defining, so you see like this ruin, the edge of the ruin is here, but the edge of the base of the ruin is there. So we just agreed early on that the base also counts as the ruin in terms of obscuring. You can, of course, define it as you like. So basically, my Telemon and my captains came up to here, and they were completely obscured by this giant rune here. And so none of this could shoot me because of this as well. And then they would shoot through here, and this would make them -1 to hit. So the terrain is actually pretty good for us as we moved up. Now, I put a unit of Guardians here, and they were completely hidden from all this, but he had a couple of flyers fly up here, and they didn't actually kill it. They needed Imhotep to smite them off with his stupid mortal wound thing, so that was pretty good. So most of my army, though, pushed up here, and what I did, just because I was super hyper excited, I pushed my Venatari straight up here. I double shot into heavy destroyers, which are here, which moved into this rune. I killed most of them, all but one, and then the Telemon finished the last one. And then Phil moves his guys up into here, and then I just charged him in first turn and ended up killing eventually that whole warrior unit while holding this objective. So that was pretty important because Phil would have had more primary points if I left them on this objective for a turn. And going second, you really got to try and take those primary objectives back as soon as possible because you're on the back foot already going second. So we'll see how the rest of the missions play out and how the GT missions play out. But definitely you can afford to hide, but you need to get onto these primary objectives as fast as you can. My game plan right from the beginning was to only do these two, consolidate on these two, and then push to this one and just leave this one. I put a unit of Guardians here just to bait Phil a little bit, and so his flyers were out of position for a whole turn, but my game plan was really to control this side of the board. So that was the game plan. I have the Venatari, all my characters, and my Telemon back here. A unit of Guardians here ended up holding this objective and planting a banner the whole time, and then this unit of Guardians died on the first turn. So that was the whole plan basically, and then Phil basically left this unit here for a turn to raise a banner, and these guys all moved up. So this is 3 heavy destroyers here, 3 heavy destroyers here, and 6 destroyers here. So that's a lot of firepower. That's all AP3. So I just had to try and engage and get to them as soon as possible. So let's just get forward a little bit. So Phil's just moving his planes up here to kill those Guardians, and he moves his warriors up here. Everything just kind of shifts around here. But these normal destroyers are kind of hiding there. So and then so no points scored in the first turn for either team, which is weird. We did all this stuff and nobody scored any points. Okay, so the Venatari have moved up here. I've got my 2 shield captains here, and my Vexilla and my Telemon is escorting my Vexilla up this way. Louis and Garrett, yes, welcome guys. These guys have moved out here. I was stupid. I should have put them in the wood. I misinterpreted the -1 to hit. So whether you're in the wood or not, you get -1 to hit. But if you're not in the wood, if the planes fly this way, they can hit this guy and not get the -1 to hit. So anyway, didn't kill them anyway. But so this is still my first turn. I'm going to shoot and kill these guys. So these guys, if they had been behind the rune, I would not have been able to shoot them. But they were in the rune, so I could shoot them, but they got a +1 to save, which didn't end up mattering. But that is how it goes. And so these guys here are not in the ruin, so none of this can shoot them because this is obscured. Okay, so that is good. Otherwise, in the old school, without ITC rules, of course, they would have had to go through the window. So it can't help. And right now, none of these guys are shootable because this rune obscures from this whole part of the army. Okay, so there's actually more. You're looking at more cover than you think there is. Okay, let's just push forward a little bit. So here we go. Venatari go in. We've killed these guys. Venatari go in and kill these warriors, and then that's about it for my turn. So on Phil's turn, he decides to pull these warriors out this way, which was probably a mistake because he's not able to advance on a fallback. He did not get out of HI range here. But I have 3 Venatari left at full strength, so I thought they would die. I mean, there's 6 destroyers and 3 heavy destroyers. All this Tesla, all this warriors coming in. The Immortals can't quite see because, again, this is obscuring, even though I'm not in the rune. If I was towing the rune, they could have seen me. So that's very important now to remember that. Okay. So basically, he shoots his whole army and only does 2 damage to one of the Venatari. And so that's not good news for Phil. So the next, these guys heroically intervene and take this unit down to 2 guys. And then my strategy now is to run the Vexilla as far as possible, drop the Alaris here, and just wreck this line. And the Telemon's going to go this way. It can just fit through this gap and is going to come and charge in this way. The Illuminor is here. That's this brown model. And he ended up coming this way and dying, sacrifice himself. And then the shield captains are just going to come and support this attack. All right, so, yep, they come this way. And then so the whole blob is here anyway. And then as you can see here, my guys just go in and everything just gets cleaned up and it's kind of game over. Okay, anyway, don't want to spend too much time going over that video, but that is basically what happened. Okay, so my list last night was just a trial list, single patrol, Shadow Keepers. My plan was only to deep strike the Alaris, maybe, and nobody else, so there was no reason really to run Dreadhost, because the intention was to homer. And although I love the Smash Cap, and I'm going to try it maybe next week, it's just not worth the whole thing just for the smash cap, which probably is going to underperform. So I went Shadow Keepers. Now it turns out I didn't use the Shadow Keeper strat at all because it was all kind of strength 7 or toughness 5 is the least useful toughness for Shadow Keepers. So I didn't end up using the Shadow Keeper strat at all. Plus the fact that I spammed all my CP right at the beginning. But still, Shadow Keepers was what I was playing. I was running 2 units of 3 Guardians, that's it. And then I ran 6 Venatari and 8 Alaris and a Telemon, 2 Shield Captains on bikes. So I wanted to see 2 things from yesterday's game, other than to see how the new terrain rules play out. So I think the terrain rules are actually going to be fine. Just start playing. They're going to be fine. And I wanted to see how our CP goes. So I started the game with 9 CP, having spent 3 beforehand. I didn't Victor. And I spent a lot of CP protecting the Venatari. So I did 1 transhuman on them, I think. I did the double shoot for 1. And I think I transhumaned them twice or something like that. Anyway, I can't remember. But basically by turn 2, I was down to like 2 CP. I was down to like 4 CP. And then so it left me enough to homer in on my turn 2. And then I was down to 1 CP and I couldn't really do anything. I used Oromite and Adamantium once for Tesla, basically, for all that -1 shooting. And so that helped with that. And then I had 2 CP at the end where I could have used to snipe out characters before I charged in. But the game was over, so I didn't do that. But I could have used that at the end as well. I thought that I got a CP back in every round. So I got 3 extra CP. We ended up in turn 3. So I think the regen trait, for now, I would say that you need that. I don't know if the Inquisitor regen trait it's not as good, obviously. I don't know if it's enough. I used Emperor's Old Spice, otherwise known as Emperor's Auspice. Thank you, Rade. I used that twice, and that's 2 CP, so that's 4 CP a time. I use that in 2 turns because he uses Destroyer, reroll hits and wounds strat, which he has to use when he chooses his unit. And then after that, I use my 2 CP to deny his 1 CP. But meant no rerolls, and with only 3 shots and -1 to hit, they were kind of screwed. So that really helped them survive as well. But that was 4 CP right there. 1 transhuman, 1 double shot. So that was like a lot of CP. But by getting the CP back, that gave me enough CP then to homer. So I think the regen trait really is key. It really is key. Not having Trajan give me a CP back for that homer was a little bit brutal, but I got the 1 CP back later that round anyway, so I don't know. I'm undecided on the Trajan thing. Trajan's going to join me next week for my game, so we'll see how that goes. But I think we're going to need that regen trait after just 1 game, so don't take my conclusions as hard fact. As I said, the terrain rules were fine. The character targeting rules didn't come into play for Phil, especially because he's just surrounded by phalanxes of Necron warriors. But for my guys, it never really came into play. I like using the Telemon as an escort because he generally is kind of mooching around the back. I really like that, and he moves 8 inches, so that's pretty good as an escort there. And the shield captains are fairly hard to kill. So they would be okay on their own, but if they're supporting their attack, they're usually going to be within range. So I think the character targeting rules just requires a little bit more forethought when you move, but otherwise is going to be fine. Okay, coherency. So the coherency issue was not really an issue for my Venatari because when I moved them up, they rapidly lost 1 guy, and that was it. So then they had normal coherency, so that wasn't a big deal. The Alaris had to deal with the coherency for like 1.5 turns, and it was not a big deal. I just put them in 2 ranks of 4, and they were completely fine. And then you just had to pay a little bit of attention where you remove your models. Phil had a lot more attention to pay with his large blocks of warriors. So for our units, I mean, it's just, instead of doing that, we're just wrapping a couple guys behind. If you have a unit of 6 bikes, just put 1 bike behind the other 5 bikes. So it's really not that huge a deal for us. So for now, I'm going to say the coherency stuff is okay. You just be careful when you pile in and you consolidate, especially if you're using Alara's shenanigans. Shortly after that, I got down to 5 guys from just wounds taken, and then I was just able to do what I wanted. So coherency so far, not too big a deal. Okay, the blast didn't really come into it. The only thing that had blast were the 2 flyers, and they were just shooting small units, so that didn't come in to factor into it at all. So we'll have to see how that goes with more games. And yeah, really, I mean, the biggest learning point last night really was using the terrain, looking up the terrain rules, what's blocked, what's -1 to hit, where to get the cover save. And once you played it a few times, it's not that difficult. And you just have to remember that things block when you're not in it, and when you're in it, they don't block. And it's fairly straightforward. Most of my runes, I'll show you one of my runes here, one of the big runes. So, this is one of my big runes. And look, it has a door and it has 2 windows. Okay, so it's got some holes, but it wasn't a big deal. And actually, I spent most of my time just outside of the runes and not actually in the runes until it didn't matter. So, we'll see how it goes. This is the ruin that the Venatari were hiding behind in the first turn, and I just set them up in this corner so that nothing shot through this window. It just so happened that they could hit me. This is a short, low wall here, and they were hit. The dude's wing was sticking up, so that we lost the guy in the first turn, but no big deal. So the terrain is, and then when you have something like this, that's pretty simple. It just blocks. And then the woods is tricky. You got to read the text on the woods. But I think the woods actually add a lot to the game with the -1 to hit, dense cover, and affecting movement and charges. The Telemon in the last turn almost failed his 5-inch charge because it was actually a 7-inch charge. He had to use his penitent reroll to get in. So yeah. What do you reckon to Sagittarium? I think Sagittarium are a unit without a roll right now. They don't shoot very well. You can only take 5 of them. They're not that tough to kill. So they just don't have a roll right now. So we'll see with the Forge Rulebook whether they make them a bit better. Okay, so what else do we want to talk about the game last night? Individual unit performances. Okay, so Shield Captains didn't end up doing very much just by giving buffs. Fine. Oh, secondary. So I picked, one of the secondaries I picked was the We Stand, We Fight. So your 3 most expensive units, if they survive at the end of the game, you get 5 points each. So that was 2 Shield Captains and the Telemon. And at no point were any of those 3 guys threatened in the least last night. And that would have been 15 points, maxing a secondary, which is quite hard to do. It was very difficult to pick secondaries. So that could be a good pick depending on your matchup. Keep in mind that secondary. Also, there's Kill More, which is attrition, I believe. That's something that we're used to doing. You have to do it all 5 turns to get max points, but getting 12 points is pretty good. So Kill More is probably pretty good. I think that's a decent secondary to pick. The the built-in one for that mission was 3 points for your opponent's objective or 2 points for the no man's land. So we kind of split that because he had scarabs on one and I was controlling this one, so that was fine. And then what was the other one I picked? I can't remember. It was difficult picking secondaries. I really hope the GT book has better secondaries. Reese has hinted that it's better. He hinted today on the TO forum, for what that's worth. Of course, Reese always says everything is good, so who knows? Raise the banners. That's right. Yes, raising the banners. That was okay. It's just so slow. It's like 1 point. It just seems really, really slow. And by the end of the game, I would have got 1 point, 2 points, 3, maybe 6 points if we'd played out the whole game. But to do that, you need probably more objectives and you need to hold lots of them. So I don't think that's a super good, and those guys can't do anything. So it's not even as good as Engineers was, because it's out of 15, not out of 4. So yeah. But I tell you what, there was nothing else to pick. So It was like there's no psychers, so that whole section of secondaries is gone. Recon is really hard now. And the one where you stand in the middle and do an action, that's okay, I guess. Could have done that probably. So it's really hard to pick secondaries. Assassinate, when it gives you, most people are running 3, maybe 4 HQs now. That's gonna give you, a most like 8 points. Slate of Warlord is just 6 points. First Strike is just 8 at the most. There was no vehicles, so like it's really hard to pick secondaries these days. So we'll hope the GT missions are better. The Vexilla was fine. He does what he usually does, just strolls up the field and drops into Terminators and stands on objectives. So he was completely the same as he's always been. And now with the obscuring terrain, you can stand on the objective and not tow into the terrain and block everything from shooting you. So it's functionally kind of the same, except you can stand on the objective instead of in the terrain, because sometimes the objective won't be in the terrain. So that's fine. The Telemon was lackluster. He finished off those heavy destroyers in the first turn. He popped a few destroyers here and there. So, flat 3 damage is nice killing destroyers. 2 shots is a bit crappy. You always miss one or miss the wound on one. But it is what it is. He didn't do much, and then he ended up killing 1 warrior when he got into combat. Next game I'm going to try double gun, because I don't really need him to punch. And I like to give more shots. So I'm going to play double gun next time. And I always forget that he has a second profile on the gun too, which I could have used to kill Immortals or something. But he didn't get shot at all last night, so no big deal. When I told Phil his stats and that he could have damage, I just didn't want to spend time shooting him, which is probably smart. What else? So the Venatari were okay. They performed better than I thought they would, but that's probably because I spent like 6 CP keeping them alive. The 3-up save is not good. So a bunch of warriors shooting them, fine. They ignored the -1, but they're still on 3-up save. So it wasn't that great. They survived because I spent resources to save them. The pistols shooting destroyers is great. I've done that before. Venatari pistols do good work against multi-wound targets like that if their strength is higher than the toughness. Once you start getting to toughness 6, then they really lose efficacy. But Mr. Funktastic, if you get them in cover now they can be shot. So you have to make a tactical decision with every move whether you want cover or whether you want them to be shot. So that's the conundrum you're facing now. So in any case, they were okay. With help, with CP, they can be okay. They certainly help fill a need in terms of mobile and their infantry, so they can go through runes and stuff like that. I just don't know if they're going to be great because they are that squishy. So Sean, I didn't want to put them in reserve because I wanted some kind of presence on turn 1, and my intention was, because I thought that Phil might push his destroyers up to try and shoot stuff, that I could peg off some destroyers because I know that they're good at killing destroyers. So that was the whole plan. And it kind of worked. So if I was playing more competitively last night and less excited to just spam CP, I would have put them behind the ruin first turn. They would not have been shot. They would have been obscured. And then second turn, move them forward, kill the destroyers, and then charge the warriors. So in that way, I would have saved myself. I would have waited an extra turn, but saved myself 1 guy. But Phil would have had 5 extra primary points from holding that objective at the beginning of his turn 2. So you got to remember that, right? You're going to win and lose games on primary, not secondary. As you can see, it's really hard to get secondary points. By the end of this game, I had 3 secondary points and Phil had 1. That was turn 3. So you have to win on primary. So it can be it could be the game to give him that turn 2 5-point cap for nothing. So you got to think about that. It could be important. Because I knew he would have uncontested hold of that objective over there with the Scarabs the whole game. And so if he holds that and the other 2, now he's got maxing his primary on that turn, and that could be the difference. So that's why I wanted something on the board to push forward. I could have started the Terminators on the board, but I knew I didn't need to, so I did drop them in. With the Homer, you can get wherever you like usually. Yeah. So the Venatari performed okay, but man, I spent a lot of CP to keep them alive. Yeah. So they're not coming to next game, but they were okay. The Terminators were fine. The Terminators were the Terminators. They came down, they took a few casualties, and they wiped everything. Once I got down into combat, there's nothing the Necrons have currently. Those Scorpec Lords are going to change that equation. That can bug me. I could have spent CP to snipe things. I didn't. Ormite and Adamantium protected me from -1 AP, so they were as expected. They were fine. The shooting was a bit lackluster, but that's because I didn't want to shoot the stuff that was right in front of me. So the Alaris will come with me to the next game. So my next game, I'm going to be playing Shadow Keepers again. I'm going to be playing a single patrol again. I'm playing two. What I wanted to try for the next game. Let me pull it up here. That's a fucked up steer. So I wanted to try this list. I'm bringing back Trajan to see how that goes, see if I can get him involved in the action sooner, and see if that Moment Shackle helps. I got another Shield Captain as usual stuff. Regen trait. I got 2 units of 3 Guardians as usual. Then I've got 7 Alars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 Alars. The Vexilla, using the Champion of the Imperium Warlord trait again, because I love me some heroics. And then I've got 5 bikes and a double gun Telemon. So I want to try the bikes. The intent will be to start the bikes on the table, use obscuring terrain, and get them into good positions to be annoying. I want to see how much that mobility really helps, over and above what like the Venatari brought. So I really want to try that, and that's going to be this week. And I don't know what Phil's going to bring, but yeah. So that will be the next game, which is coming up. Okay, what else did I want to talk about this game? If you guys have questions on the chat, please put them in. I'll go to the Discord questions, and then that might jog my memory. All right. So funnily enough, Rade, I could not have even moved the Land Raider past these ruins because there's not enough space. So lucky I didn't bring a Land Raider. The Telemon just managed to squeeze his butt between the ruins. Okay. Minimum size squad for Alaris and the ideal size now that you've had to experience the new coherency rules. As I said, new coherency rules are fine. Okay, 6 months from now, nobody even going to remember what the coherency rules were in 8th. So it's fine. Bring your big units because it's way more CP efficient to do that. So just do it. Bring your units. Okay, I used to say bring 5 instead of 6. Now I just say just bring 6. You're going to lose that one guy like an Overwatch or something. It'll be fine. So seriously, the coherency is not a big deal. Just if you need to, just practice doing it in your basement. Put your things together in coherency. Practice moving them around if you really need to. But it's really not a big deal. Nobody's even going to remember it, that it was any kind of a deal in a few months' time. Do you see yourself taking an Assassin Inquisitor in future games? Well, I had a whole bunch of lists with the Calexis in it for the Soul Horror mostly, and maybe some Psychic Defense. And I took them out because that 100 points I really wanted. You know, it's part of it is because I'm just playing against Phil right now. It's not a combat army, so I don't really need that anyway. So I'm kind of using it so I can try other Custodes stuff. I don't want to just take him just for the sake of it. But I think he would be a guy that I still would consider taking if I was going to a tournament or something. So, you know, Calexis Assassin. I don't think is worth taking any other assassin at 100 points. My personal opinion. Inquisitor, I don't feel the Inquisitor gives you enough psychic defense over a Calexis. Again, the same amount of area of effect. And certainly, I mean, the odd smite here and there, sure, but, you know, whatever. And I don't think the CP regen trait is going to be enough. Inventory starting off the board, we already discussed that. As I've said many times before, just because something can start off the board doesn't mean you should start it off the board. Okay, G-Man. Okay, so there's a big discussion right now on G-Man. G-Man is whatever, 400 points, and he's a beat stick. You know, I hate playing against G-Man. He's hard to kill and he wrecks things. He gives you reroll auras, and he gives you 3 extra CP because you take him into Supreme Command, and then you run a patrol, a battalion, or a brigade, and he gives you that amount of CP back. Fine. So if you're taking G-Man, you're probably not taking a Telemon. If you're taking G-Man and a Telemon, you're probably not taking a lot of other stuff. So as always right now for us, it's opportunity cost. So sure, running G-Man gives you 3 extra CP, and he's pretty good. Putting the fact that it's filthy souping aside, and you can justify that fluff-wise all you want, George. It's still filthy souping. Putting that aside for the minute, sure, run G-Man. It's probably better than running a Knight, and a Knight's going to cost you CP. So if you want to soup something, that's basically souping with no downside other than the points that it uses up, which is not insignificant. So that's my thoughts on G-Man. Okay. Okay. So somebody brought up Archaeotech Munitions, so that's the Melta stratagem. So funnily enough, right at the end of the game, my 2 shield captains were at the other side of the board, and the 2 flyers were over on my side of the board, and they were within 24. So they just turned around and shot their 2 salvo launchers into the flyer, and I was like, sweet, reroll wounds, sweet, 2 Meltas going through, 2d6 damage, 3 damage. So I could have used the Archaeotech Munitions stratagem there, but I didn't. Snoop, how do you think Mortarion will fare in the new edition? I don't know. I hope he dies. Seriously, I think the Primarchs are going to do as much or as little as they always have done. There's going to be plenty of things in the new edition, just like there was in the old edition, that will one-shot a Primarch. You can deep strike it, sure, but it's going to cost you a lot, like 3 CP to bring them on. If that's worth it for you, then go ahead. So that might make them survive 1 extra turn. So there you go. So Brynjar says, I proclaim that we absolutely need CP regen trait, but I spent a lot of CP in turn 1. Yeah, so I spent a lot of CP. Part of it was just frivolously because I hadn't played in a long time and I wanted to try everything and I just wanted to spend CP. So part of it was that. Part of it was overexcitement because I haven't played for a long time and I just wanted to spend CP. Part of it, though, was I did not want to lose those Venatari at that point in the game. They needed to hold that objective for me to not give Phil that 5-point victory primary. So that was important. So we are going to spend our CP. Whether it's saving the Venatari or saving something else, you're going to spam most of your CP or all of your CP in the first 2 to 3 turns. So and if you can't regen and you're waiting for the drip CP, you're going to be a bit handicapped. So I think regen is important. I've only played 1 game, so I don't know. But the initial impression is going to be important. And so if you're going to do something to regen, you might as well do it so that you give your best chances of getting it back. And that is that commander trait. Sure, there's the opportunity cost of not taking the other ones. But if you really think about it, and we got to test these other traits, are they really that good? Other than the Destroyer one, which again may not be as good if you're trying to stick next to your unit to not get shot. That Destroyer one, what might mean that you get shot. So, opportunity cost. George is here, of course, to ring in with his Inquisitor, but that is 5 up 1 time per opponent stratagem. So it's not as good. So yeah. Okay. It's an option for sure. I don't get the feeling that it's enough regen for us, but we will see. Have not tried it. Okay. Do you think GW gave enough love to close combat, or will shooting be too strong? So I think actually that if you play on a table with good terrain and it's fairly dense, that you will have no problem actually getting close to a shooting army. I mean, Phil basically played his army like a gun line, and I was there, no problem. We were playing on traditionally our worst deployment, which is Dawn of War, and there was no problem moving up. And if you have big ruins, even if they have holes in them, if you use them to obscure, you'll be fine. So I think it'll be fine. I think everybody's dooming, glooming. They have not really played enough. And they don't have good terrain. So I think it's going to be fine. We need to play more games, obviously. I've only played one game. I'm not an authority on anything. But just in this one game, it was not a problem at all. As I've already said, the terrain was fine. So I think it'll be okay. Okay. Let's go to stream here. Thoughts on assassins benefiting from Custodes Detachment +1 invuln? They do not. Have I tested the Caladius yet? No, I haven't. I might throw a Caladius into a list in the next few weeks. I'm not particularly super excited about Caladius tanks right now. And with the Forge book coming out, we just don't know. So it might not be before that book comes out, but we'll see. Vexilla +1 attack or -1 to hit. I think we run, the points are tight for both Vexillas these days, to be honest, because we're running Telemons and there are a lot of points. I think if you got to pick one, obviously you run two, then run two. That's great. If you're going to pick one, then I still going -1 to hit because it still messes up a lot of armies. I mean, it turned off all the Tesla last night. It messes up guard. It messes up anybody that hits, messes up Tau unless they get marker lights on you. Like it's just still very good. And if somebody's stacking plus hit, now you've negated it. So it's still better than an extra attack because I think we already have plenty of attacks. Okay. Okay. Some people arguing about assassins getting our benefit, which they don't. So, okay. So, that's kind of it. It was just a short episode just to talk about last night's game and my initial impressions of 9th edition. And just to let everybody know that we will be streaming again. I'm hopefully going to restart the weekly games. For a little bit, it's just going to be Phil until Francois comes back from the cottage, which is at the end of July. And for a while, it may just be 2 or 3 people that I trust that are not sick to have in my basement. So you have to understand, I cannot just bring random people over to my house right now. So, that's going to be cool, and I'm super excited to play again. Next time, hopefully, I will be slightly less overexcited and maybe have a slightly more tactical game. But it was, if you could have seen, if I had set up the room camera and you could have seen me, Phil was basically peacefully sitting at his chair, thinking about what to do, and I was literally like this. I was just constantly pacing. It was just too much. So, but anyway, and oh yeah, if anybody has tech knowledge, so what I have is I've got the dice cam over there is my digital SLR, which is a Sony, hooked up through Camlink into the computer, and what's happening is. It's like lagged. It's like almost like slow-mo. When you roll the dice is like slow-mo. It's not happening in real time. And I thought initially maybe it was just trying to stream it at super high resolution. I turned it down on Streamlabs. I turned it down on the camera itself, and it still wasn't was still like that. It didn't change. So if you have any tech ideas about that, please let me know. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, guys. Please subscribe on the YouTube. Follow us here on Twitch. Follow us on Facebook to get all the updates in terms of schedules and shows. Join the Custodes Discord. Join the Discord where the Custodes people are, but also all the other people. The schedule goes up there. The question channel's there. Everything is there. We have all the rules and stuff pinned under the channel, so you can get everything there. So do join it. Thank you very much to my patrons. There's not a lot of you guys, so I really value you. So thank you very much. If you want a patron, then check us out, patreon.com/CanHammer. And we will be back next week for a podcast and a live stream and maybe a Tactica. And coming up, I'm going to try and get Shane Watts on the channel. He's got some interesting list ideas we're going to talk about. And Eric Trock is back. We're going to get him on the channel to see what he's up to heading into what's left of the season. And still got to get Richard Siegler on the channel as well. So we got a whole bunch of people I want to interview in a few weeks coming up. So we're going to try and arrange those things. So thanks very much for watching, guys.